hello, everyone. Welcome back to RTT. It's good to see you. And look who's here this evening, the iconic and legendary Ari. Hello, my friend. It's good to see you.
Always good to see you, Donny.
Not exactly praying. Oh, never mind. You do have the praying hands. There we go. Leo, you've been waiting for that, right? It is good to see you, though. But I mean, granted, like we've been talking a lot lately anyway, so it's not like we haven't seen each other.
It's true. We did that interview with Ryan that's coming out soon.
I know. So just to kind of provide an idea of what we have been doing with that, like, so Ari and I have poems that were transformed into songs on an album titled Recovery by the musician Brotherwell. And we are doing these track by track interviews talking about our poems / songs, and it's been really fun. But beyond that, Ari, how have you been doing and what have you been up to?
I was telling you in this back room. I spent way too much time on TikTok today, and I think that social media really does make us depressed because I literally was laying in bed feeling like my brain had been fried.
Oh my goodness, right? I get that way too sometimes when I'm on TikTok, and then I'm just like, okay, I have to put my phone away or something. I need to like stare at a tree or a flower, and then I'm like, oh, okay, gotcha.
I need to read a book or something, or like take a shower because I need to blow the stink off me.
Oh no, I've not bathed. What's going on?
Let me clean the crumbs off my shirt.
Oh my God, I love
it. Anyway.
Our theme tonight is nature versus nurture, and we'll unpack that later to determine if that's nature or nurture.
We're going to try to be very, very serious in this episode.
Right. Yes. I'm serious sometimes, but we all know that we can have a good time.
I'm going to crack jokes. So many jokes.
Please do. We need it. We desperately need it. So we have Leo here. Leo says, welcome back.
Hello.
And Arby's here. Hello. It's good to see you both. So what I've been up to lately, I've actually been working this week. This just like some like office-y stuff, just getting things organized, mostly because I normally wait to the last minute, and I'm at this point where I'm like, oh, I gotta take a break, or I have to like get things prepared and ready to go. I was reading Leo's comment. That's why I said taking a break. Heather has a family engagement tonight. That's why she'll
be back though. And
yes.
I'm going to do my first show with her. And I'm really excited to be with her. And I'm really excited to work with her because I've been watching the shows. I've been kind of hanging around the background, lurking. And I really like what I see. And I think she's amazing. And we're going to have a lot of fun together.
Yay, it's going to be great. So speaking of what you've been doing, like on the back end of things, do you want to talk about what you've been doing? Restitching the Tapestry.
No, we talked about, I don't want to plug anything. I just want to.
Oh, right. Okay, that's fair.
I'm through social media out where everybody talks about their stuff.
Are you okay if I summarize it?
Huh?
Are you okay if I summarize it?
Feel free.
We like, just is to be as general as possible. We are working on having Restitching the Tapestry be on different podcasting sites, which is a pretty cool growth of our show, and we're really excited to see where that takes us. So yeah, that's been really fun. Thank you, Ari, for doing that.
So if you are listening to this through our podcast service, welcome. We are glad that you are here and you are listening with us today. We have a great topic for you, and we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're just happy you're here. Yes.
1000%. So per the usual, I'm going to go over our show's mission statement before we get started. We live in a dynamic society where social media shapes us by creating greater opportunities for connection. It has led to a developing understanding of the adversity many marginalized communities face, the powers causing the adversity, and those who act as bystanders as atrocities take place in real time. Our goal with this show is to make connections and have challenging conversations about social topics, current events, pop culture, and art. Together, let's weave the threads of understanding with what privilege we have in order to learn, educate, and create in a world that's growing. I almost felt like that was a dramatic reading of the show's title.
I really felt it, actually. The reason why I do the praying hand is because it gives me a moment to like collect myself and really think about our show's mission statement and like really internalize it every time.
I like that. Like I try to do that while I'm reading it too. Like I'm just like I kind of zone into like this meditative space where I'm like, okay, like make sure the topic connects with this, etc. And then it does, obviously, because we could have we have a variety of different discussion questions to go over tonight. So
So many discussion questions.
and like, and if anything, if we don't get through all of them, then of course, per the usual, we might have a part 2. So we love our 2-parter episodes. I know they're some of my favorites. So, okay, let's talk about nature versus nurture. It's something that we hear a lot. A lot of people always are in media, especially being exposed to like this pairing. Like, why are these things even matched up? So I figured I would begin by defining what nature versus nurture is, and I have a couple of different sources that defines it for us. So let's see, what did I do with it? So the expression nature versus nurture has been framed as a debate between those who argue for the dominance of one source of influence over the other, but contemporary experts acknowledge that both nature and nurture play a role in the psychological development of all of us and interact in complex ways. The expression itself describes the question of how much a person's characteristics are formed by either nature or nurture. Nature meaning the innate biological factors, namely genetics, while nurture refers to the upbringing or life experience more generally. Because I'm a nerd, I found a second source to kind of compare definitions.
I love it.
So this medicine.net, the first source was Psychology Today. I think that's a little bit more reliable, but medicine.net says that in the context of the nature versus nurture debate, nature refers to biological / genetic predispositions impact on human traits, and nurture describes the influence of learning and other influences from one's environment. The debate over whether the strengths and weaknesses of people are the results of nature this is an oddly worded paragraph. The debate over whether the strengths and weaknesses of people are the results of nature or nurture has and somewhat continues to rage on between scholars and people alike. Okay, that's a very strangely
So
described
basically,
paragraph.
people think that there's a debate between whether or not you are the way you are because of whether or not you've been pooped into the shit or what you've learned through the shit.
It's that was a better definition than both of those
I
things.
have been spending a lot of time on TikTok with a bunch of very sarcastic Gen Zers. I am
here for profane Ari tonight.
It's starting.
It's beginning and I am here for it all the way. Going through comments. RP says that they can relate to my last video. Oh, I'm glad you can. Though I'm sorry that you struggle with self-confidence difficulties.
Don't be upsetty. Have some spaghetti.
The next time we do like a funny moments video, we're gonna have so much content just from this episode. I think I missed my window to say praying hands, but I guess I'm able to say praying hands by proxy.
If I do praying hands enough, I can actually become a praying mantis and eat the next person that I sleep with.
I'm sure some people would enjoy that.
It'll be a fun time ahead for all. I'll either be a praying mantis or a black widow. Either way, something's gonna happen.
Something drastic's gonna happen. Lagiacris is here. I got to meet Lagiacris at G-Fest 2 weeks ago in person. It was really wonderful. It's good to see you here, my friend. And RP says that they are glad that you are back. Yay. Okay, so back to our serious topic, of course.
Very serious. Okay.
Serious. Okay, so being that we've kind of established the definition, like I was a little bit like wondering, like, where did nature versus nurture come from? Like somebody had to have coined this term, right? So essentially, nature versus nurture was originally credited to an 1800s psychologist named Sir Francis Galton, in like the late 1860s. But basically, at the time, scientists, doctors, and researchers and behavioralists kind of debated these different theories. And also, around 400 BCE, Hippocrates described behaviors as being biological as well. So even way back then, there were conversations about this. It just wasn't labeled nature versus nurture necessarily.
It's interesting that you said his name like that, because I've only ever said his name in my head because I've read it, the Greek philosopher. So I say Hippocrates.
Oh my God, did I say it wrong? It's possible that I said it wrong.
I don't know. I don't know how it's pronounced. And that's when you said it that way, I was like, is that the right way? Am I saying it wrong? What is life? What is
Isn't
love?
that where the Hippocratic Oath comes from? Is
don't hurt me no more.
The thread of our reality is rupturing due to this pronunciation.
Hey, I have been watching a lot of Mandala Effect stuff. Latest Mandala Effect stuff is what was some latest Mandala Effect stuff? There was the Eurythmics. Sweet dreams are made of these. Apparently, it's changed. Sweet dreams are made of this.
What? Really?
Yes. In the lyric, you look up the lyrics, it says sweet dreams are made of this.
I can't see.
It's made of these. It's made of these. The rhyme scheme breaks down. It doesn't make sense.
It's gotta be these. Like, my inner poet is like, nope, it's gotta be these.
I swear to God, Google it.
I can't. Oh, I have no doubt about it. I believe you.
Anyway, so Hippocrates, Hippocrates.
Crisis. We're having a hippocrisis. Okay. So I guess like obviously one of the first things that we do when we are confronted with a topic like this is we try to think of where like it crops up in our own life, right? Or how we like kind of internalize it ourselves. Yeah. So as the person we are today, how do you feel that you've been shaped? Have you been more so shaped by your nature, or by nature itself, or by the nurturing environment that you've experienced?
I would honestly say that if I life or death situation, if I had to choose down to the wire, if I had to push the button, the superhero push, you can only choose one. I feel like it would be experience that I would have to push that button.
So like nurture for sure.
It would definitely have to be nurture. I feel like there is a predisposition for things, but mostly it's been experiences in my life that have shaped who I am, that I feel like I wouldn't have the level and degree of my bipolar disorder if I had not lived in Seattle and had the very stressful, exhausting, fast-paced environment that I was in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that the environment itself just contributed to those different variables, right?
There was just a lot of stress, and I felt like I had to constantly perform in order to maintain my lifestyle. And I feel like it was just sort of like I was running on this conveyor belt, and eventually I just fell, and I fell into, because I feel like I was just always at like the low level version of my mental disorder. But I feel like it really just I fell off that conveyor belt and it just ramped up.
Yeah. Um, so for me, I would say for me, it's definitely nurture as well. Um, Granted, like, I think that society kind of like assumes that people have a nature, right? Like when it comes to how they should behave, etc. And we can break that down in a little bit, but for me, like definitely nurture because I don't think I would behave the way that I do or identify the way that I do without the different variables and influences in my life, right?
But
Now,
like I said, I think that there are some things that are predetermined, like the
mhm,
fact that we're gay is, I feel like
yes,
that's predetermined. I feel like, you know, I feel like gender identity or not,
yeah.
no, gender is a construct though. Um, it's difficult. It is and it isn't. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, so another thing, one of these sources clarified that a lot of people kind of like separate nature and nurture as being not even connected to one another, but both sources established that they're so complex that they are interwoven, actually. I
Yeah.
mean, case in point, like for both of us, like we are LGBTQ plus, I'm cisgender, you're non-binary, like we both were aware of our identities in some way, shape, or form. Like even if it was subliminal, like at a young age, like I knew that I've always known that I've been LGBTQ plus since I was like I almost said as a zygote, but that would be way too sarcastic. But like since I was capable of perceiving other people, really. Um,
I didn't have the words for what I was for most
right.
of my life. Like, I was just a tomboy, or I was just like very boyish. And like, that's just what I was until like it became like a public thing. And then I was like, in like 2016, that was like my awareness, my trans awareness. Like, and then
Mhm.
I was like an egg. I was like, oh, but I don't know if I'm actually non-binary. Like I feel like you have to be a specific type of person to be non-binary. You have to be androgynous. And it's like, and then I just sort of like, I pooped into the shit and I got my experience.
Well, yeah, like and truthfully it is I just like spat on my computer screen. How disgusting. But like it's so
Spit
true.
on me, daddy.
like like it was just like blah. Oh, I'm so lispy today. What's going on with me? Let's see. Lagiakra says, I don't know where I fit in the nature or nurture thing. It's excellent food for thought. Like at first, when we were coming up with this topic idea, I didn't know either. Like I was just like, hmm.
It's
Um,
difficult. It's difficult to separate the two because, on the one hand, there are certain things that we are predisposed for and predisposed for having. Like in my family, there are certain, I feel like mental illness is something that we are predisposed for, or that there is something that is predisposed for. But certain things like the way that my family does disordered eating, I feel like that's very much a nurture thing, that it's something that's been passed down generationally through my
yeah,
family because of poor self-image. But that even
yeah.
has a genetic component to it too, but mostly it's nurture.
Right. And see, that's where they kind of are interwoven, right? Because
Hmm.
like in I think it was the Psychology Today source, it talked about how like mental health related things can be like genetic predispositions, but sometimes like environmental factors or like social factors can like impact them as well, you know?
Right.
So like for me, I guess for me, psychically speaking in my own body. I feel that for me, nurture would be personality wise and socially the person I've become. Nature largely being how like who I know that I am on the inside based on my impulses. Does that make sense? I hopefully that makes sense. I don't know. I'm not a behavioral scientist. Yeah, we should have had that disclaimer. P.S. Everyone, Ari and I are not behavioral scientists, but we are trying our damnedest to have a good conversation about this.
We are two people having a discussion in real time.
In real time, an academic discussion.
So, how I feel about it is that our DNA is the structure of the house. So we build the house and we have all of the framework of the house. So our DNA is like the framework. And so our experiences that we have, the nurture we have is all of the furniture, the decorations and everything that we put in the house. So everything is the house itself. It's just that the framework is the predisposition for something, but the house itself, the thing that we usually see the most are the way that we paint the walls, the type of furniture that we put in, the way that we set up our rooms.
I'm nerding out right now. That made it so easy to visualize. Yeah, like I think that's a really great analogy for it because a lot of the nurturing thing obviously happens when we are able to perceive the different things happening around us that influence us. Yes. So what does the phrase nature versus nurture get wrong? So this was
the thing that I have the most problem with nature versus nurture is that it makes it seem like it's this binary. It's got to be one or the other, and it's got to be just this thing. It's got to be like our animal instincts versus our human nature, and that there's like this war of like mental intelligence versus like our primal instincts, and it just doesn't work like that.
Right. Yeah, like that's exactly what the Psychology Today, so that's the conclusion that it came to, as well as just that binary, like people separate. You're basically
I am so smart.
Psychology Today.
SMRT. I am so smart. SMRT.
Ari, did you write this article that I found as a source? Lagiakra says, not every. Essentially, yes. Essentially, yes. Godzilla Karu is here. Hello, it's good to see you. Welcome. Yeah, it's 100% true. Okay, so let's talk about so I feel like the nature versus nurture thing can also be weaponized in some unhealthy ways. So let's talk about some ways that people use nature versus nurture to excuse negative behavior. So the first example that I can think of is boys will be boys when they do something terrible. So like, I know, like, not to go back to, my bullying experiences when I was in middle school and high school, but whenever I would tell somebody about like what was happening to me, like the immediate adult response was, oh, well, that's just boys being boys. They do that. Like, it's in their nature. Really? So, I mean, can you think of any?
I see white supremacists, because Leo was saying this, bigots and misogynists who try to hijack it. I see like white supremacists, like there have been studies done about like young children, like very young children, like 2 years young and younger, like talking about, like they do studies on like who they think is the prettiest. So like they have like a color variation of like white people and like black people, and they say that the ugly people are black people, and then like the pretty people are the white people, and then like the skinny people are the pretty people. And it's like it's sort of like that they use this as like, oh, it's a predisposition, or that like there was a time when people thought that black people were not as smart as white people because of their literal cranial shape, that they were genetically predisposed to be less intelligent than white people. And obviously that's wrong.
Right.
So it's like some people try to justify like hateful ideas about human experience. So like black people weren't stupid. It's just that they didn't have the resources in order to learn how to read or live by the standard of education that white people had. So like, you know, with people who slaves who came over on the slave ships, they were disenfranchised from their tribes, but they had like a very rich culture over there, and then they had to kind of like cobble together a new culture over here, and kind of start over again. So it's sort of like, yeah, it's like I don't know where I'm going with this, but
I think I know where you're going with it.
it's like they had a rich culture, they had stories, and they had their own intelligence. They had a very intelligent, wonderful, vibrant, beautiful culture, and it's like they were considered stupid because they weren't up to Western ethnocentric standards. And
Right.
it's like, so it's sort of like it's hard to say, you know, what is the most intelligent, or what is the best, or what is, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, and if we think historically, like if we think of different social sciences, like there have been instances historically where those have been weaponized as modes of colonization, right? Like I majored in anthropology, and we talk about this at length in that field, where like early anthropologists weighed every culture's intellect and capabilities against what we thought and what we dictated as being normal, or as being the standard, right?
mhm,
So, like, I would say that the whole nature versus nurture binary does have some history and root in colonization, because it has been used in the past to justify very horrible actions, right?
mhm.
And I think that that's a filter that we have to apply to this as well, that um there is scientific basis for nature versus nurture, but there are also
There's this, I feel like there's a little bit of a slippery slope when you talk about like genetics and like how people are, and like trying to categorize people as their genetics versus their experiences, that like it's very individual, like people's experiences and the way that they are, like their genetic predispositions and their experiences are extremely individual, and we try to like kind of classify or collectivize them, or like generalize them as to like how people are the way they are. Like we think about criminals or people with mental illnesses, or like marginalized groups, like why are they the way they are, why do these small groups of people, um, break from the larger societal norm? And the problem with that uh, is that it's an individual experience, that it's hard to generalize these things, because
right.
um, it's more individualized than I think it is, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. I definitely think it's individualized. I mean, there is a communal component to it, but then again, like we have to examine the whole binary through the context that they're interwoven, and through the context that we also have privileges and biases that might prevent us from fully understanding.
I just think a lot of our resources have gone into looking at these like larger macro scale things about nature versus nurture, and it's
Yeah.
like, because we want to find out, like we want these big answers, and really what it should be is that we should be looking at it on a more like smaller individual level, as to why do certain individuals end up the way that they do, and maybe you can pull general ideas from that if you start pulling in data, but mostly I want it to be more individualized, because I feel like
Mhm.
that it's more fractional, because like with criminals they talk about, like, because I took a criminal justice class when I was at college, and uh, it was interesting because it was taught by a former police officer, so he had opinions,
Mhm.
very strong opinions. So
Mhm.
the criminal justice book that we were talking about talks about how people in various socioeconomic areas, they are more predisposed to crime because it is put in a certain situation, and if they, that if they're in a certain area, those experiences make it so that they are predisposed towards these crimes. And he's like, all of those things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, like, if you're living in a socioeconomic area, or that you have a family life that is poor, and that you have parents that are not there to help you. You choose to commit the crime, and that's all there is to it. And that's why you should go to jail, is because you're full responsibility for your actions, and there's no other reason for it, no other justification for it. You just go to jail, directly to jail. It's like, that's kind of how it feels with nature versus nurture. Is like,
Yeah.
it's sort of like, it's either, excusing completely, like, you are the way you are because of your genetics, and ignoring the experiences that you've had, or ignoring the genetics completely and being like, it's all experience. There's no responsibility on your predispositions.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point. It's just kind of, I don't know, like, part of me just wants to entirely be free of categorizations like that. But like, as humans, like, it's like we have it so instinctually embedded in us to categorize. And
Would you
it's,
say that we're genetically predisposed?
is that in our nature, perhaps? Oh my goodness, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Lagiacris says, I'd say my mental health stuff, like my autism and ADHD, is definitely nature. As for nurture, maybe some of my mentality and the way I handle things, much like what Ari said.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Well, what we just talked about did kind of cover the next question about how does certain less than attractive behavior, such as being a criminal, play in nature versus nurture. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, or do you think we?
No, I didn't realize that was the next question.
Oh,
Just
was
lock me
that
up and put me in prison. It's fine.
was that in your nature to know that that was next?
It's like I'm a psychic or something.
Or were you nurtured to anticipate such things?
Or I wrote the questions.
Or you, or you wrote the questions. Sorry about our bad jokes tonight, everyone. We hope that we can provide some entertainment at
I
least.
apologize. I apologize. From the cockles of my heart, I ship out an apology for you. It's
Ari, it's
floral.
not our fault. It's not our fault. It's in our nature. It's in our nature.
Sorry,
Anyway,
I'm in a really weird mood today, and I'm really excited
too.
about being back. Like, I'm
I'm
giddy
excited
right now.
for you to be back. Like, it's, well, and it's just, it feels refreshing. It feels fun. And I think that this is also a really, like, I feel like this is a topic that we are exposed to a lot, but we don't really get to have an in-depth conversation about often, you know? So how does certain personality traits like intelligence, sociability, charisma, adaptability, strength of character, kindness, how are those affected by nature versus nurture?
I'm
Hmm.
kind of two minds about it, because I feel like the capacity for intelligence and kindness has a genetic component to it. Hi Taylor.
Taylor, hey,
Um,
welcome.
so, but like I said, it is a very slippery slope to say something like that, because, like I said, that there are people, white supremacists, and people who think that intelligence has a racial component, and that if you are of a certain race, that you are more intelligent than another race. So I say that there are genetic components to intelligence, but I'm not saying that it runs along racial lines, because that's a very slippery slope and very dangerous and very wrong and horrible to say. Um,
Hmm. Right.
but at the same time, it's not that it's not that it runs through that. I feel like that, I don't know how to say it. Um, because I've, like, especially with like charm and charisma and stuff, I feel like there's just something about it. Like, there's something that
Oh.
Yeah,
Keep
Amy
going. I'm reading
Forever.
we'll get to the comments shortly.
But I feel like there's like a genetic component, like a genetic part of it, that part personality kind of. I think they talked about. You know what I'm really thinking of right now is Gattaca. Have you ever watched Gattaca? They
No,
talk
but
about
I've heard of
those
it.
designer babies, like where you can. That it was sort of like having a child by natural means was considered less than ideal, and that people were that Ethan Hawke was a natural born baby, and that there were that his brother was a designer baby, and so he was less short and he was kind of awkward and he had like physical like problems with him, like he had a heart murmur, like a pre-heart problem, because he was a natural born birth, and his brother had all of this other stuff and was this really great person. So it was sort of like he got left behind because of all of these predispositions.
Mhm.
But it made it seem like his personality was also like they made it seem like in Gattaca that if you were a designer baby, you basically could do anything that you wanted, and that you were like morally or superior in some personality type of way because you were pre-genetically disposed. But what it's shown is that Ethan Hawke had to work harder, and that he showed his drive, and that he actually got to be that astronaut that he wanted to be. He just
Mhm.
had to like work that much harder for it.
Right. That's a good point. I like the example that you just drew. Oh, so looking at the comments, Lagiakra says, predictability and how good people are at predicting things are, I tend to predict things a lot, and I tend to not like it when I predict things, especially in a series I like. Right.
Don't
Um,
Amy, don't
oh
sorry,
yeah,
sorry
Amy.
for spamming the chat. It's very interesting. I like what you have to
Yeah,
say.
we're getting to your comments in a second. I've been like reading over them. They've been very interesting. And PS, love the username. I'm nerding out about it. So you say very interesting. Sorry for dropping in like this. Love your channel, Donny. Thank you. I appreciate that. The implications of genetic theories of human nature are not obvious since genes alone do not produce
That's
attributes.
kind of what we were saying, yeah, is like
Yeah.
I was talking about the house, is that like so genes or DNA kind of builds the structure of the house, in that our experiences basically like are all the furniture and the walls themselves, like painting the walls and all of the decorations inside the house, and that what you really notice the most about the house is all of the stuff in the house, with the experiences, but there is that component of that foundation of the DNA.
Right. And Amy Lee Forever also introduces some schools of thought that I think are very good to discuss too. Like you say that nativists employ poverty of stimulus arguments to demonstrate that an idea or cognitive ability could not have been learned, whereas
Mhm.
empiricists believe that our beliefs about the world come from our uh, perceptual connection to the world and not from our natures. And then Amy Lee Forever goes on to say, is gene slash environment dichotomy false? I think nature and nurture are not mutually exclusive, but that does not mean we cannot distinguish between robust and plastic developmental events.
And I think that's what the opinion
Yeah.
that we both came to as well, is that it's that there that it's not diametrically opposed. It's not like it's just one or the other. It's like one thing playing into another thing, and that it's this messy thing. It's you're being shat into the shit, and then you live in the shit, and the shit is all around you, and you're just admired in the shit.
Oh, that broke me. Logging Akra says, some of the genetics things brought up remind me of eugenics and social Darwinism. I may believe in evolution, but not social Darwinism. I don't know how to word it after that. Yeah, like the term eugenics, like especially Ari, when you were talking about that, example earlier, I kept thinking about eugenics or like genetic engineering.
Mhm.
We're cracking up too, Amy Lee forever.
I'm on fire tonight.
I know,
I felt it.
since this is such a complex topic, I think it's good to weave in a little laughter from time to time, right?
I think this is just I think that I'm just on top of my the reason why there was a question earlier about where I was, and I'm gonna be honest, like I talked like the last episode I did, it was sort of like where the show was headed. Um, I don't know if you really noticed, but I was in this very strong state of burnout. We had been
Mhm.
going for quite a while, and mentally and emotionally, like my genetics had kind of that a
Right.
human being such as myself can only handle so much stimulus. So I had to take a break. So I
Right.
took that break for several months because I was just working on my own situation, decompressing, and just wanting to love the show again. And that's why I'm back, is because I love the show.
I know, and like those creative and like psychic breaks are so important. Like, and I'm glad that you feel refreshed and that you're back with us.
Yeah.
Taylor says, so much of it is just a luck of the draw. You only have the capacity available to you where you were born unless you manage to break out. Yes, 100%. That kind of kind of cycles back to earlier when we were talking about like privilege and how that impacts different people too. Leo says, this episode is the good shit, fam.
So in response to your statement, Taylor, sometimes it's just a shit deal.
Hmm. Yep. Shit's been the theme tonight. Let's see. Taylor says, like, we can't really measure it because there are inaccessible culture/groups that we aren't able to add into the equation. Yes. Mm-hmm. And Lagiakra says, burnouts are the worst. I'm still in the middle of one somewhat. I've been in one lately with poetry, but I'm slowly kind of inching out of it, thankfully.
Writing poetry, what's that?
I know, right? Oh my goodness. Uh, I've written at least like 7 or 8 poems this month, and for me, that's well, for the past few months, that's a lot.
Anyway, let's get back on topic, Betsy.
Anyway, yes. Um, so, how does nature versus nurture affect the animal kingdom? That's interesting.
So I was thinking about this because what I had in mind specifically was apes, the way that apes are raised and how they are, because we think of animals as being like unintelligent and that they're just like very instinctual and that they have this genetic component. Like that's what I was saying, is that humans kind of have this component where we use our like human intellects and our human experience, our consciousness to fight against our animal instincts. So we think that animals don't have like learned experiences, or that they don't pass anything down to each other from learned experiences, that it's purely, genetic, instinctual passing down, very oh god, what's his name? Oh god, it's a psychologist. Um oh, it hurts. My brain. Oh god. Um
Do you want to look it up?
yes, I'm googling. Thank you, Google. You will it's a very Jungian way that like things are passed down. All of the history is passed down in this very Jungian way, right?
Hmm.
So, so you know, I feel like there is, even though there's not like like words that we would recognize, or language or stories that we would recognize, I feel like animals themselves do tell each other um, that they relate to each other histories, that there are certain things that they have, like especially with apes, they have things, objects, like places. It's the same with like trout and stuff. There are places that they go to. It's not just instinctual, it's that they go to these places because they've learned to go to those places, and that there's more of a there's more than just an instinct to it, that there is
Mhm.
experience added to that. And I think that like people tend to see them as just like these unthinking, baseline, very stupid things that have no thoughts, or this is my
Mhm.
veganism coming out straight up. I'm just
I love it.
being
I love
very
it.
bold and unabashed about this, that I feel like animals have a lot more feelings and experiences than we give credit for. And the only reason why we don't give them more credit is because we don't speak their language.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we always measure everything based on our intelligence, our communication, our understanding of community, right? Whereas, like, many different species have their own languages, communities, and habits, right? Yeah, that's an excellent point. Let's see. Leo says pit bulls. We literally have a not exactly true breed of doggy, because we don't train them well. Their aggression isn't nature but nurture or lack thereof in this context. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I'm always seeing people like go on and on like, oh, well, it's in this animal's nature to be terrible, so I have it as a pet, right? But like a lot of the influence is how the animal is treated, what it's
Mhm.
exposed to, based on that nurture, right? So bringing it back more so to like how we are impacted personally, how has nature cropped up in your life, and how has the experiences, the nurture affected you to become who you are?
Well, I'm short and I'm fat.
Was that nature over nurture?
That's nurture. A little bit of nature, but mostly nurture. I do like cookies
Cookies, don't
and
even get
ice
me.
cream, but but there is like a nurture or nature component to it, like that certain body structures are just a certain type of way. You know what I mean? Like certain bodies are just a certain type of way, and that like even when I was at my skinniest, I was still never at the what the BMI scale said was acceptable weight. Like I will never be that acceptable weight ever.
Mhm.
Like the idea of being 140 pounds, like it's just never going to happen for me. I literally starved myself and I only got down to 160 pounds. Like that was like my lowest level.
Mhm.
So I feel like bodies, because of this experience that I had, they just there's a homeostasis, a certain set amount of weight that we have, and some of it is experience, like eating ice cream and overeating and stuff, but there is a genetic, like a very strong genetic component, in my opinion. so
Right.
so I am short, I am fat, but also I am kind, and I am smart. I'm smart.
Yes.
And it's because uh, things like my mother read to me when I was a child, and my mother told me to uh, always treat others the way that I would like to be treated, and that was always put into my head a lot as a child, and that I saw through my father abusing my mother, the way that two people should not interact with each other, that watching somebody treat someone the way that they shouldn't, like the way that they shouldn't, like that they ought to be treated, like
Mhm.
treating someone in a way that they shouldn't be treated, that they
Right,
wouldn't
yeah.
want to be treated themselves. It made me realize like I want to be a kind person. I don't want to be that type of person like my father. I want to be more like my mother, who tries to be the kindest person she can.
Right. I, you know, for me, I would also say that like looking at the examples I had to look at, like that's why I'm the person I am today, right? Like because my biggest fear, like my grandmother was very abusive. On my mom's side was very abusive, and seeing how she treated other people, that became my basis of like I want to do better than this and not become that person, right? The chat right now. So,
let's get back to the chat. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Let's get to it. Let's unravel it. Let's unwrap it like
I don't know about you, Amy, but I want to be a dwarven princess in Lord of the Rings.
Does that
If
mean
I
I get a
can,
huge mug of beer that's like half my size?
if I can Thorin Oakenshield, even though he has his own situations
Does
based
that mean I have
on
to grow a beard if I'm a dwarven princess? Because I don't think I can do it.
Taylor says BMI is bullshit. Even the inventor said so. Lagiacra says, I'm used to people being shorter than me. Donny knows this. Yeah, you discovered how short I am in person for sure, right?
So, Taylor, do you know what I think the BMI basically is? Some bullshit kid with a calculator who was like, body should equal this times this equals this, and this is the ideal. And it's like
just like smashing
like putting
keys.
things into a keyboard, like typing, like doing, like doodling, like a picture of like a person, and they're like, this is fact, this is science. And it's like, you basically did some kind of weird, crazy math, kid.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. Taylor says my height and genetic breast size made my BMI default obese pre-pregnancy, and because of that number, the doctor's office said I should only gain 15 pounds over my pregnancy. BMI shit. What? Oh.
That's me shitting a brick.
Oh my goodness.
I am so mad about that. I hope that you gain more than 15 pounds. Just
right.
to spite them.
Right. It's just, it's so frustrating. So, okay, back to the questions. Where does something like soul or some kind of higher religion or higher moral standards that society expects us to be the effect of nature, like where does that weigh into the equation?
So it's like that criminals, we do this moralization that you have to be like this ideal, perfect person. And it's like, you know, our individual experiences make us a certain way, right? So,
Yeah.
like I said, that in marginalized communities, in socioeconomically, you know, poor communities, that it's like we expect them to stay above this like standard that like, and there's a certain amount of moralizing, because it's like this white supremacist moralizing that like if you're white and young and pretty and this like ideal person, then you are like the greatest. Like there's that hierarchy, and that we have this like unspoken hierarchy that we have in our society that seems to be genetically composed. You know, I just, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like there's this like moralizing, and it's like it's like that. I don't know. It's just like that. It's more complicated than that, and we expect people to be like that. We expect it to be like black and white, and that we don't take into account like their individual experiences. Taylor, I do believe religious experiences are geographical and cultural, but I do believe that there is a basic human need for some things. Like there are certain things that kind of go across certain cultures, and that there are certain things that are kind of universal to the human experience of things that we need specifically. Like this idea that like most humans need this idea of like connecting to something higher than ourselves, to like, you know, feel that like
purpose.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, creating purpose or like creating rituals. And it's almost like it's not that it's necessarily genetic, but there's like this innate human desire for certain things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. David Sperling is here.
Oh my God, forever and a
David,
day.
it's
Hello,
so good to
David.
see you. And don't worry about being late. It's good to see you. It's been a while. I hope you've
Better
been
late
doing
than
well.
never.
Right? I hope you've been doing well.
I think
Whoops, I
we're
just
handed specific beliefs by those when we're little. But
right.
I feel
Well,
like the
yeah.
human desire for certain beliefs is something that, because you can accept or reject beliefs. Like I have been handed beliefs that I had when I was younger, but as I became an adult, my beliefs changed. So I feel like that that there's like a certain universal experience when it comes to like religion. Now, I'm not saying that this is like entirely like 100% everybody experiences it this way, but people who have experienced like religious beliefs or like beliefs in a higher power or higher powers, if you're a polytheist, that there's like a certain human innate need for certain things. Like we need certain things mentally and like emotionally from religion.
Right.
And I'm kind of wondering if there's like a genetic component to that.
Well, I mean, we have seen scientists before argue in the favor of it being human nature to be curious.
Mhm.
And I think that that could be like the central, if we were to say instinct to that, right? Like, because when we think of like
But there's like
us,
an evolutionary biological reason why we're curious, because it's been shown through evolution that that is advantageous to us.
mhm. um, David Sperling's been held hostage by medical school classes. Oh my goodness. I hope things have been going well on your journey so far. Taylor says the very concept of belief instead of living with just facts is what makes humans different than animals. That and language, anthropology, boy.
True.
Yes. So let's think of mutation. How does that weigh into nature versus nurture? Or actually, do we want to talk about Amy's comment first?
Yeah, that's a good comment. These have all been really good comments.
Yeah,
I
like
love
you
every single
guys,
one of these comments. You guys are great tonight.
you've been slaying the chat
Not
tonight.
that
It's
you're
been
not great
great.
every other night, but
Right.
I'm so glad that I'm here with you and engaging with you on this night as opposed to all the nights that I haven't been
We hit the
here.
sweet spot, right? Amy says, how does one even gauge a goodness of a person? Sin is basically a religious concept. Laws vary from culture to culture. For example, in Islamic Sharia law states rape women is like a stoned to death. I think so it varies from religion to religion. I think that we gauge goodness based on a community's acknowledgement of how the community itself defines good versus bad, right? Like, I mean, of course we have like as humans we have like specific emotional responses to different things, like instinctual responses, but in order to collectively acknowledge a a set of parameters for goodness, that's usually defined by a group of people, right?
Honestly, I feel like what this whole comment that she said about the goodness of a person can be an entirely whole episode by itself, because I have a whole hour's worth of thoughts about it.
Writing it down. Right, Amy, thank you for that idea. So, how do we define
And we
goodness?
are at 58 minutes. So I
Yeah,
want to respond. The short answer is we can't, in my
right,
opinion.
right. Every like people are gonna have diverse perspectives on goodness, right? David says going further along and defining meaning in life definitely helps us get through all this. Yeah, yes,
Mashigas.
Mashikas. Taylor. So I think the theme of the night, since we are at the end here, the theme of the night has been we can't just keep things in a binary. Like these, like nature versus nurture, it's much more complex than we are willing to. I mean, we are willing to acknowledge that it's complex, but it's much more complex than just these simple terms, right? Like there are so many variables associated with it.
You can't tie me down, baby, as much as I'd like it.
Oh my god. I need a
Sorry,
minute.
that was a little off.
I need a moment.
Sorry, that was a little
Okay.
much.
Oh my god. I'm
And that's
hot
the
now. David has a great thought for us to conclude. In my study of science and religion, I find life is anything but binary. The ocean of the human dimension is deep and wide.
So wise. I always love when you're here, David, because you always bring a lot of insight. And Amy Lee, I don't think I've encountered you before, but you are so amazing, and I'm so glad that you showed up
I
today.
am so glad here that you are here as well, and I'm wondering if it's because I've done Evanescence content that why you're here, because it recommended. So thank you for joining us, and you are always more than welcome to participate in our conversation. So, well, without further ado, my friends, we are going to bid you farewell for the evening. We love you. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you
And
all for participating tonight. You're all amazing, our regulars as well as new people. You're great. You're amazing. It was so nice to see you, and thank you for making this comeback episode for me very special.
and David says we all look great. Oh, I love it. Okay, anyway, I'll stop being vain now. We love you and you have a good night. Bye.